This 17-year-old just took a massive loan from the scariest moneylender in town, all for a girl who doesn't even know he's broke.
In the bustling town of Enugu, 17-year-old Emeka believed that the key to winning the heart of the beautiful Chidimma was to shower her with the finest things money could buy. Every afternoon after their secondary school classes ended, he watched her walk home with her friends while wishing he possessed the resources to give her the luxurious birthday gift she had been talking about for weeks. Driven by his strong feelings and an overwhelming desire to appear wealthy in her eyes, Emeka decided that he could not simply give her a plain greeting card like everyone else. He spent days searching for a solution until a smooth-talking older youth in the neighborhood introduced him to Mr. Okonkwo, a notorious local moneylender known throughout the market for giving instant loans to anyone willing to sign his strict agreement. Without fully understanding the heavy interest rates attached to the cash, Emeka eagerly took a large stack of crisp Naira notes from Mr. Okonkwo's desk, promising in writing that he would return the entire sum plus double the amount in just 2 short weeks. Holding the money in his hands made Emeka feel like an adult with limitless power, and he immediately marched straight to the grand shopping center near the park to buy a gorgeous velvet dress, imported shoes, and a glittering necklace that he knew would make Chidimma smile bright. When her birthday party finally arrived that weekend, Emeka walked in with immense pride and presented the heavy decorated gift box in front of all their classmates. Enjoying the gasps of delight and praise from everyone in the room, Chidimma hugged him warmly and thanked him for making her feel so special, which made Emeka feel as though all his worries were completely gone and his risky choice was entirely justified. However, as the loud music eventually faded and the party came to an end, Emeka walked back to his modest home in the quiet night, suddenly realizing that the fixed 14-day deadline was already counting down, and he had no actual source of income to pay back the formidable lender who was expecting his money. For the first few days following the grand party, Emeka felt like he was walking on air as news of his incredible generosity spread through every corner of the school. Chidimma sat next to him during break time, showing off her shiny new necklace to all their envious classmates while praising Emeka for being the most caring and dependable boy she had ever met. Every compliment made Emeka swell with pride, so much so that he began spending the small amount of leftover loan money to buy snacks, cool soft drinks, and extra treats for Chidimma and her friends at the school canteen every single afternoon. He loved the attention and the newfound respect from his peers, completely ignoring the little voice in his head that kept whispering about the dangerous debt hanging over his head like a dark storm cloud. He convinced himself that 2 weeks was a very long time, naively hoping that some magical solution would somehow appear before his deadline arrived to save him from trouble. However, time moved much faster than Emeka ever anticipated, and before he knew it, the second week arrived with unrelenting speed. As the days ticked away, the reality of his terrible situation finally set in, causing the sweet feeling of popularity to turn into bitter panic. Every time his family sat down for dinner, Emeka found himself staring at his plate in complete silence, unable to eat because his mind was racing with terrifying thoughts of what Mr. Okonkwo would do when he realized the money was gone. He looked around his humble family living room, knowing that his parents worked extremely hard just to pay his school fees and put simple meals on the table, which meant asking them for such a huge amount of cash was entirely out of the question. To make matters worse, Chidimma kept asking him to join her for another expensive weekend outing, completely unaware of the crushing anxiety that was making Emeka's stomach turn in knots every time his phone rang. When the final evening of the 2-week deadline arrived, Emeka lay awake in the dark, watching the hours slip away and listening to the ticking wall clock, fully aware that morning would bring Mr. Okonkwo's strict collectors to his front door. When the morning sun rose over Enugu, Emeka could barely gather the strength to put on his school uniform because every nerve in his body was shaking with fear. He walked to school with his head down, taking long detours through narrow, dusty back alleys just to avoid the main roads where Mr. Okonkwo's men usually spent their mornings monitoring the neighborhood. His heart pounded wildly in his chest every time a motorcycle zoomed past, fearing that the riders were coming to grab him and demand the double amount he owed. School provided no safety either, because throughout the morning lessons, Emeka kept glancing out the classroom window at the front gate, completely unable to concentrate on the teacher's voice or write notes in his exercise book. When the final bell rang to dismiss the students, his absolute worst nightmare became reality as he spotted two tall, muscular men standing right beside the school gate, scanning the crowd of departing students for his face. Terrified of being caught in front of Chidimma and his classmates, Emeka turned around, sprinted toward the high back fence of the school premises, and scrambled over the concrete wall as fast as his legs could carry him. He ran through the neighborhood until his lungs burned, hiding behind abandoned buildings and waiting in silence until the sun went down before slipping back home through the kitchen door. The terrifying pursuit only intensified over the next few days, turning Emeka's once peaceful life into a constant state of hiding, where he was afraid to walk down his own street or answer the front door. He began skipping school altogether, pretending to be sick just to stay indoors under his blanket while jumping at every loud noise outside. The constant fear and lack of sleep wore him down completely, making him realize that the fake lifestyle he built to impress Chidimma had trapped him in a nightmare he could no longer escape on his own. Sitting alone in his dark bedroom with the windows tightly shut, Emeka finally broke down in tears as the overwhelming weight of his secret became completely unbearable to carry any longer. He knew that if he continued to hide under his blanket and skip school, the relentless men looking for him would eventually find his family's home and drag his innocent parents into a terrible mess they knew nothing about. With trembling hands, he grabbed his phone and called his older brother Uche, a university student living on the other side of town, begging him to come home immediately because he was in a desperate situation that required urgent help. When Uche rushed through the front door a short while later and saw his younger brother looking pale, thin, and utterly terrified, he demanded to know the absolute truth without any further lies or excuses. Breaking down completely, Emeka confessed every single detail of how he borrowed money from the dangerous moneylenders to buy expensive gifts for Chidimma, how the interest had doubled overnight, and how mysterious men were now tracking his every move. Instead of shouting or hitting him, as Emeka had feared, Uche listened with a deeply serious expression, shaking his head at the foolishness of trying to impress people with borrowed wealth. Uche explained firmly that pretending to be rich was a dangerous game that could destroy a person's entire future, but because they were brothers, he could not simply stand by and watch Emeka's life fall apart. The very next morning, Uche took a brave step and accompanied Emeka directly to the local office where Mr. Okonkwo conducted his business, determined to face the intimidating lender face-to-face and negotiate a realistic way out of the crisis. Standing before the stern-faced moneylender, Uche used calm and respectful language to explain that Emeka was only a young student who made a grave mistake out of youthful ignorance. After a long and tense conversation where Mr. Okonkwo shouted and threatened serious consequences, Uche managed to strike a firm agreement, promising that Emeka would work off every single kobo of the debt through honest manual labor under their strict supervision every weekend until the entire balance was fully cleared. The following Saturday morning marked the beginning of a grueling but necessary chapter for Emeka, who woke up long before sunrise to report for duty at the harsh agricultural storage yard managed by Mr. Okonkwo's business associates. Gone were the days of walking casually to school, showing off expensive gifts, or trying to look like a wealthy young man for Chidimma and her friends. Instead, Emeka spent his entire weekend lifting heavy wooden crates, clearing thick weeds under the scorching afternoon sun, and sorting heavy sacks of yams until his palms developed painful blisters and his entire body ached with relentless fatigue. Whenever he felt like complaining or giving up, he looked across the yard and saw his older brother Uche quietly working alongside him to share the burden, which reminded him of the grave consequence of his past foolishness. During those long hours of exhausting physical labor, the reality of what he had done finally sank deep into his mind, making him realize that true dignity and respect come from hard, honest work rather than empty pretense or trying to buy someone's affection with borrowed cash. By the time the final weekend of hard labor arrived weeks later, every single kobo of the devastating debt had been completely paid off, and Mr. Okonkwo handed over the torn loan agreement to confirm that Emeka was finally free. Walking home alongside Uche with dirt on his clothes and calluses on his hands, Emeka felt a profound sense of lightness and peace that was infinitely better than the fake happiness he had chased during Chidimma's birthday party. When he eventually returned to school on Monday, he no longer cared about showing off expensive jewelry or trying to impress classmates who only liked him for what he could buy, choosing instead to focus genuinely on his studies and true character. He even saw Chidimma walking past with her friends, but instead of feeling a desperate need to catch her eye, Emeka simply smiled to himself, knowing that he had learned the hardest and most valuable lesson of his life. Never live a lie to impress anyone, because genuine self-worth is the only wealth that truly matters.